ways are back again. Extreme places I didn't know. I broke everything new again. Everything that I don't, I threw it out the window, came along. Extreme ways I know will part the colors of my sea. It's a perfect colored sea. Extreme ways that held me, they held me out late at night. Extreme places I had gone, that never seen any light. Dirty basements, dirty noise, dirty places coming home. Extreme worlds alone, did you ever like it then? I would stand in line for this.
Hello, my name is Billy Gregson. I teach television media here at Del Val, and we have a very entertaining evening planned for you tonight. We'll begin with a special guest speaker and questions from students in media journalism, and if time permits, we can take some questions from the audience. And just in case that's not enough for you, there will be refreshments in the cafeteria and a book signing after. I have the pleasure to introduce our special guest speaker, Mr. Foreman. Mr. Foreman is a correspondent for CNN. He's a 4-time Emmy Award winner. He's a journalist who has covered nearly every major news event over the past 3 decades. He has recently written a book, you can see up there, My Year of Running Dangerously, A Dad, a Daughter, and a Ridiculous Plan. And that's why he's here to talk to you tonight. But it's not just about running, reporting, or Emmy Awards. It's actually about something much more important in life, balance. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Tom Foreman.
Well, it's good to be here. It's good to be back in high school. As my friend from CBS, Bob Schieffer, used to joke and say, some people graduate cum laude, and some graduated magna cum laude, and I graduated thank you laude. It's good you're here. I like people in the back. Didn't know we have some Methodists with us. This has been a really interesting time. I'll say that I'm dressed as I am because I don't know if you're aware, I'm in the middle of a bit of an endeavor now promoting this book. About 3 hours now? I guess about 3 hours ago now. I finished my 4th marathon in 4 days. So I cracked 100 miles of running in 4 days earlier today. Save your kind words for the memorial service. And tomorrow I'll run one more into New York City, where we'll have an event tomorrow night for the book in Central Park, and then I'm going to run the New York City Marathon on Sunday. But I'm taking 3 days before that because you should rest before a long race like that. It's a good plan. I'm really happy. I met some of the students here a short while ago, and I had a really nice time visiting with some of them. There were like 8, 9 students in the class, 6 or 7 of whom were very impressive. I won't point out which ones. Anyway, this book has been a real labor of love, and I cannot thank the school enough, the book garden, and all the good folks for having me here to talk about it, because it's been a very special experience. I suppose all of us love books in our own special way. I've spent a lifetime thinking, well, maybe one day I'll write a book. And I did write one some years ago, which I was telling the students it never got published, so I actually just practiced typing a lot. But this one sort of grew out of an amazing year. And the beginning of it, in a nutshell, is the beginning of the book. The first chapter begins, my descent into the madness of ultra running began with a Thanksgiving conversation. The dishes had long been cleared, we watched some TV, and I had returned to the kitchen when my 18-year-old daughter, Ronnie, asked that question every father dreads. How would you feel about running a marathon with me? My heart jumped, my pulse raced, a bite of leftover stuffing fell from my fork. As a veteran journalist who's been to war zones, riots, and natural disasters, who has covered serial killers, slipped away from knife-wielding lunatics, and ducked beneath gunfire, I never imagined I would face the most frightening moment of my life in this fashion. And yet there I was, staring into her big blue eyes, wondering how I could escape. I had been a marathoner back in my 20s, but now I was knocking, I'll make that pounding on the door of 51. My knees made strange sounds when I climbed out of bed. You could play Foggy Mountain Breakdown on the muscles in my lower back. I had the flexibility of a stepladder, and my weakness for cinnamon rolls had convinced me that covering any sizable number of miles would forevermore involve a combustion engine or a plane ticket. I squeezed into a sweatshirt and jogged down the road now and then, and I looked fit, but I could feel the toll of too many years of business travel, late nights of work and bad mealtime choices. More fried shrimp, sir? Absolutely. Can I get some more tartar sauce? I remember two things about marathoning. Training took a lot of time, and I never trained enough. Consequently, my races were exercises in absurdity. I'd start out fast, fall apart in the middle, and by the end be hobbling like some newly discovered Dickens character named Chuffy Dimblewit. By contrast, Ronnie was young and strong and had embraced the keys to lifelong health, good eating habits, a reasonable amount of sleep, and a work-play balance that allowed her to excel. Her muscles rippled with the power and grace that teenagers take for granted. I wasn't sure what had possessed Ronnie to propose such an idea, and I triangulated a fast end to the conversation. You know, honey, training for such a long race can be very hard. She looked at me and said nothing. And remember, this is your first year in college. What are you studying? Juggling? Aerospace engineering. Well, that sounds very difficult. Physically, this would be very tough. I'd hate to see you get hurt. You know, some women wind up sterile. Nothing. I sighed the way a man might when the judge asks if he understands the charges. Okay, when do we start? That's actually how this began, and I had not the slightest idea that it would be a book at the time. I truly thought marathoning was well behind me. But when daughters ask dads about things, it's a different equation. And what happened as a result is I started training more and more, although rather reluctantly. I won't read a whole lot tonight, but I'll just read a little bit because it's fun and I still laugh. So it makes me feel good. I have a job, a family, and several interesting hobbies. Ronnie and I went out that evening, and like the next day, and had a little test run. We got a schedule. We started training for this marathon she wanted to run. I have a job, a family, and several interesting hobbies. I read a lot, I cook a fine jambalaya, and I like to watch movies and TV. We entertain now and then, and I've been known to clean the garage every few years. And sometimes we travel. In other words, like most people who traipse into the runner's realm, I knew that my first challenge would not be getting fit for running, but rather getting running to fit into my life. My career has always demanded long, strange hours incompatible with regularly scheduled exercise programs. So I crawled from bed bright and early the next morning, pulled on my running gear, and took my wife Linda to breakfast. Shouldn't you be, actually running? She asked as I leaned over my bacon grits and a steaming waffle at our favorite cafe. The schedule says I'm supposed to rest today. From what? You want me to train properly, don't you? I asked. Yes, she said slowly. Well, the schedule says I shouldn't start too fast. But you do have to start, don't you? I started yesterday. Did you miss the part about resting? Then why are you wearing running clothes? Just getting used to the idea. You know what they say, discretion is the better part of valor. Well, what does that mean? I don't know. I think it's a question. What's the question? Are you going to eat those sausages? And it kind of went from there. The result was we ran the marathon. Ronnie trained, and we had a wonderful time running the marathon. And then, because I had done that, and I felt really good about it because I actually worked at it for the first time in my life. I was sort of a natural runner when I was younger, and I didn't have to train much. Suddenly I was actually training, and it went really well. And the result was, from almost a standing start, I ended up running 4 half marathons, 3 full marathons, my first 55-mile ultra marathon, and about 2,000 miles of training, all in that 1 year. Yeah, it was wacky. But here's the interesting part about it. People say, what is this book about? And I say, this book is about getting older. It's about relationships and how they change, no matter how much you may not want them to, because we all advance through our years, even the young people here. Think about the people who were friends with me here in 5th grade and how it's different now. Maybe better, maybe worse, but it's different. And this is a constant process. It's about doubt, Because trust me, you don't take on races of 52, 53, 55 miles without a lot of doubt. Because that's a long, long time running, and many things can go wrong, and often do for people. But it's about wrestling with all of those things, and dealing with all of those things, and having a sense of humor about all of those things, and learning about all of those things. And it happens to include a lot of running. Because running became, as so many runners say, it's not about running. It's about an awful lot of other things, which have to do with just how you grapple with your life. And I'll tell you this right now, our family is not all about running. We all run to a degree now, but we're not all about running. Nor do I think everybody should run. Some people don't like it, and I don't blame them. They have other things they want to do. But this became a new language for our family about having a passionate feeling about life. We always had it, but sometimes when you're, for adults here, when you're raising children, for kids when you're going to school, it's easy to get buried under all the stuff you have to do. And you start feeling like all you do is sleep, work for the day, eat something, and go back to sleep. And that's no way to live. And it's really easy to have happen. For me, running has become a thing that sort of reminded me that there's a lot more to just, you don't want to just get through days. You want to get into them and have a great time. And frankly, for those of you who are my age or older, I also decided I don't want to have the second half of my life just be some pale echo of the first half. I want it to be something good, something worthwhile for me and for my kids, so we have a life that we feel good about living. So that's the basic story of what happened here, and it got crazier as it went along. There's a lot of detailing of the wars out on the trail, and the beginning of it summed it up very, very well. I'll just read this one last part, and then we'll get into some chatting here. It's actually the prologue of the book, but I like it because it was so much like this, and it made me laugh so hard. As I charge over the hilltop, the trail is a muddy chute flanked by scrub and snow. Powering down the middle with quick strides, I windmill my arms for balance. I head for the flat where I'll hit dry earth and blast away. 50 steps left, 20, 10, calamity. My left foot shoots sideways. I grab for a branch, miss, and keep spinning with the grace of a hog tossed from a train. The back of my head slams into a tree trunk and I go down. My vision racks to zero, then screams back into focus. My ears ring and my shoulder goes numb. Cold mud is plastered up one side of my body and something hot is running down my neck. I press a white glove against my skull and pull it back red. I have three choices. Remain seated on this remote trail waiting for someone to come along, which might take 30 minutes or 3 hours. Cut through the woods to the nearest road and accept that if I go down in transit, I won't be found until next spring, probably by German tourist. Was für ein Tier war das? What kind of animal was that? Or I stagger up, jam my hand against the wound, and I keep running. 45 minutes later, I burst into my home in suburban Washington, D.C., in a shower of snow, ice, and mud. My wife, Linda, leads me to the bathroom, checks my pupils for a concussion, and begins washing away the gore. My gloves sit on the sink like evidence in a murder trial. You don't need stitches, she says, slathering on antibiotic cream and pushing my hair back into place. I look at her in the mirror, and I grin. Thanks, Dr. Gray. She answers with the word, idiot. That was originally the original title of the book. I wanted to call it Idiot. And the people at Penguin were like, no, we're not going to call your book Idiot. So that's the deal. I know we have some questions from some of the young people here about this process. We can get the conversation going. So hop on it. Let me hear something.
My name is Connor Mills. I'm a junior here, and besides running, what else do you do in your free time?
Well, lately, not much of anything. No, I do a lot of things that I really like. I obviously like reading, and I like writing. I play piano, I play guitar. I used to have a band. For those of you who are old enough in the crowd, we once opened for the Grassroots. Check us out. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That was a great night. That was the closest I ever came to being a rock star, man. That night, wow, it was great. So I do that, and I draw and paint, but I sort of cycle through the things I love doing So that when running is predominant, running is predominant. Now, when I back down my mileage, when I get through with this nuttiness I'm doing right now, I'll probably back my mileage way down. I may start drawing again, things like that. So, what else?
Hi, Mr. Foreman. My name is Alexander Wardak. I'm a junior here. And I was wondering, what, if any, skills are present in both broadcast journalism and running?
Endurance. That really is part of it. Endurance is truly one of the big ones. Because if those of you who are interested in broadcasting and journalism, it can be, particularly in the field, when you go to a very big event, you can work and work and work. When the Los Angeles riots happened, which was, I think, before you guys were born. Yeah, it was. But, thank you very much. When I was a child, I remember Robert Fulton came around with his steam engine. It was amazing. Dang contraption went right down the river. During the LA riots, I worked for 50 straight hours. And I was like blind by the end of it, because we'd been through all this great story, fascinating story. And then at the end of 50 straight hours, I got in a car and drove across Los Angeles to a hotel, and I slept for 3 hours and then came back and worked for 24 hours. Endurance makes a big difference. But I'll tell you, endurance makes a big difference in almost any job if you want to excel at it. What else?
I'm Sarah Raphael. I'm a sophomore this year, and I was wondering how you're able to balance work and still stay in good shape for like running marathons while being so busy.
I'm actually not in the kind of shape I wanted to be in for this running right now. I'm paying a price for that a little bit. My feet are a little sore just because of this mileage. I thought about that today when I was crossing 100 miles. I thought, I've never really had my feet be sore, but they feel a little sore right now. I think that's because I'm heavier than I should be. Bottom line is, a lot of that is, and this will be true in any job you have too, is about priorities. Figuring out when and where and how you're going to do things, and it often means going the extra mile when you may not want to go the extra mile. I will say this about running. That's true. Almost anything you don't want to do sometimes. There are plenty of days now when I don't want to run. It's cold outside, it's raining, there are a lot of things that are a problem. You get through the first mile, you almost always feel better. And we had an interesting rule. My daughter, Ronnie, and I had a very interesting rule. And she's coming down, by the way. She's up at MIT now in Boston, continuing with aerospace. She's coming down to run the New York City Marathon with me. It'll be good fun. A good rule, I think, that we just sort of stumbled into. If you want to run, and insert in place of run, whatever it is, the thing you do that gives meaning to your life beyond what you're doing. If you want to do it and you just can't because you truly have a schedule conflict that can't be overcome, it's okay to skip that run. The run you can't skip is the run that you don't want to do. If you don't want to go because you're tired, you don't want to go because it's miserable out, you don't want to go because it's hard, our rule was no, that's the one you have to do. You're going to tell your body and your mind who's boss. It's not going to tell you. You happen to life. You don't let life happen to you. So that's part of it. And so I did a lot of weird hours. There was one run I took out in Las Vegas where I thought I truly thought I wasn't going to make it because I got lost. I went out after dark. And I was running in this wilderness area outside of Las Vegas, and it was all fine for a while. It wasn't dark when I started, that's for sure. And then suddenly I turned the corner, and it was as if, somebody had turned a switch, and it just plunged into this tremendous darkness. One moment I was trotting along thinking I was due to head back. The next instant, I'd made the turn only to find twilight flooding the valley. The path I'd just run was no longer a warm, seductive strip, but a faint blur of darkness, fading into the wilds of Nevada. Night was not falling, it was crashing down. You should be carrying a phone on your runs, Ronnie had told me a few weeks earlier as I grappled with the cold. Why? You think I'm going to be attacked by raccoons? I'm serious. What are you going to do if you get into trouble out there one day? At this point, I was doing typically 16, 17, 18-mile runs, so there was a lot of time just gone, right? I'll be okay, I responded with the bravado of a father. She has a point, Linda had added later. You're covering such distances now. Do you realize how hard it would be for me to find you? I don't want the extra weight. A phone slapping against my side the whole time. Come on, that would be miserable. Let me tell you, pal, finding your carcass in the weeds by the highway won't be a picnic either. So when you think about the phone, I'd sigh. Sure, I'll think about it. At this moment, I was wishing I had taken stock. I was wishing I had. I took stock and tried to keep calm. I can't count the number of stories I've done over the years about people who set off to hike. I'm talking about how cold the West is. To hike, pit camp, gather wood, or watch birds, only to wind up fighting for their lives at the hands of that cruel harpy Mother Nature. The West is particularly fertile ground for such tales. The land is filled with sheer cliffs, crumbling escarpments, falling boulders, mine shafts, razor ridges, and mountains so massive that the wrong flank can be as isolated as the dark side of the moon. If you're lucky enough to get lost in a flat section, the advantage is minimal. The landscape is parched in most places, either full-on desert or something close to it. Thorn bushes, nettles, cacti, and other vicious plants abound. The weather is merciless. In the summer, you can be baked by African heat in the morning, beaten by hailstones the size of toasters at noon, and then buried in 6 feet of snow by supper time. Tornadoes, dust storms, wildfires, and hurricane-strength winds are common on the peaks. Lightning pulverizes hikers like a giant bug zapper. In the valleys, flash floods sweep away campers as neatly as a giant toilet. The only good thing about all that is it helps you forget the relatively remote possibility of being throttled by a puma, poisoned by a pit viper, gored by a bison, shredded by a bear, or dragged to the ground by fang-bearing slit-eyed coyotes. That was the environment I was running in. But the point is you prioritize things. Yes?
Hi, my name is Ella Stanton and I'm a sophomore, and I was wondering if you had a favorite type of running shoe.
I tend to run in a lot of Brooks shoes just because I'm comfortable in them. I have a pair of Mizunos I like a lot. This is kind of serious runner talk. But interestingly enough, after the first 2 days, I was running with one pair of Brooks on this run. I ran the Saturday, I ran a marathon, and Sunday I ran the Marine Corps marathon. And I came out and my feet were really not doing well. One of the toenails was turning black. Not a good thing for people. And so I switched to a very old, very beaten up pair of Brooks shoes. And it took the pressure off my feet so that I'm feeling better. I wear a lot of Brooks. Yeah.
Hi. I'm Nick Klein, I'm a senior. I was wondering what the biggest challenge you've been presented with while running is.
While running?
Yeah.
Probably the biggest challenge was when I started ultra running, when I was running these 50-mile races, which I'm supposed to do one of those in a couple of weeks, but I don't think I'm going to be ready for it. It became time. Time was a big deal because at any given moment, making time for this level of training, I would typically run a marathon on Saturday, a marathon on Sunday, and then another 30 or 40 miles during the week, 50 miles during the week. I said at one point in the book, it was like making time to watch Gone with the Wind before we're going to work. And that's the single biggest challenge. There are physical challenges, there are hard things, and trail running involves a lot of falling. So I'd come home some days with my knees bleeding and that sort of thing, but that's kind of minor, that's not a big deal. Time is a big issue, and that's why I tended to pick races in limited form and not go totally crazy about them. That year was kind of crazy, but not totally crazy, because there are a lot of things in my life a lot more important than running. Like time with my daughters, time being a decent dad, playing with the dog, things like that. Come on.
I was just wondering, what is the ultimate goal you want to achieve through running?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I like it. It's fun to do. I probably won't do it indefinitely this way because of the amount of time committed. I suppose if there were an ultimate goal, I'd like to be around for a long time for my daughters. I think this makes me healthier. And I'd like to be a happy guy while I'm around, and this makes me happier. So those are good things. And I'll tell you what I don't want. I don't want to look around 20 years from now or 30 years from now and find that I cannot fully enjoy my life because I didn't take care of myself enough. So I try to be better about that.
All right, I was wondering if you liked to drink any sports drinks while you were running, and if so, if you had any favorites.
No favorites. You have to drink them. We have an interesting point about ultramarathons, these 12-hour races, or for me 12 hours, so not very fast. You have to consume, while you're running, somewhere between 10 and 12,000 calories. So you have to eat a week's worth of food while you run the race because you're burning so much energy. And the weird part is most ultra runners, by the end of the race, and that's all like garbage because you need stuff to burn through you fast. So it's all like donuts and cookies and M&Ms and chocolate cake and chocolate-covered bacon they had at the last race. And by the end of the race, almost all of us are like, I cannot stand the idea of another bite of this stuff. But you have to keep packing it in because you're just burning those calories like that. It doesn't last, just for the race.
On a related note, do you ever get stomach cramps while running?
No. Your body doesn't process food very well when you're running. So you're kind of careful and you sort of learn what's good for you and what you can eat and what you can't.
What suggestions do you have for students looking to go into the media field?
We were talking about this earlier with these fine students here. I understand some of you are the parents of these, all these excellent students I met here. Congratulations. That is, we know, having our two college daughters, we know that that's hard work. It's a lot of hard work, and it's a great thing that you do when you get kids pointed in a good way, as these kids clearly are. What advice do I have if you want to go into the media? It's kind of the same advice I have for anybody who wants to have a successful career these days. It's the marketplace for jobs is still tough out there. I think apply yourself to the thing you love with great passion. And show up earlier and stay later and work harder. And through that, your talent will grow. You know, Drew Brees, the quarterback of the Saints, says he hates the word talent. He said everybody has talent. Everybody has some kind of talent. He said the value is your ability to apply hard work and effort and concentration and discipline to it. That's what turns that talent into something great. And I have seen many people who wanted to go to the media over the years who had a lot of talent, but they didn't have that desire to understand that it is both an art and a science. There's a lot of work that goes into getting good at it. So that's some of the advice.
Also, pertaining to your education, I read that you went to Troy University and you also have a degree in theater performance.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how that, because it's not exactly what you're into now, how has degree in theater performance helped you with broadcast journalism?
I majored in broadcast journalism and dramatic arts so I can act like a reporter. That pretty much covers it. No, I tell you, you know what actually, this relates to that, but this is a strange thing. For those of you who are actually interested in journalism or any kind of media, this really does make a difference. One of the most instructive things I ever did, when I was 12 years old, I started a magic show. We didn't have a lot of entertainment back then, so don't judge. But I started doing a magic show, and it grew bigger and bigger. And I did malls and schools and conventions. In fact, this is when I would have first been on stages like this many years ago, but with the magic show. And I did floating ladies and flying birds and big balls of fire and the whole big amazing thing. But you know what's great about that? The great thing about magic is you always know what you're actually doing, but you have to simultaneously think about what people see. And whether you're making a movie or a radio show or a news story, I do think one of the values that you should take from that is the ability to say, look, the person who you're trying to tell this to is sitting home cooking pork chops. Or they're cooking the dog, or they're cooking the dog. That's a whole different story. But your ability to see the story from their point of view is really valuable. You'll learn a lot from doing that. So that's what, there's obviously some dramatic things that are involved about how you structure a story that are very helpful. But frankly, you don't have to be a drama major to do that. You can do that by reading a lot. I always say to people who want to go into media, watch a lot of news, read a lot of news, but also watch a lot of movies, read a lot of great books. And this may bore the stuffing out of a lot of you, but read a lot of poetry. Because poetry is like the espresso of language. Really well written poetry is unbelievably powerful with very few words. And that is useful in anything like media that involves essentially storytelling. What else?
I was wondering who's been the most exciting person to meet while you were on the job?
The most exciting person to meet on the job. I interviewed B.B. King a couple of times, and I really liked him. He was a good guy, incredibly talented, incredibly hardworking. You want to talk about hardworking? B.B. King, how old was he? He passed away like last year, right? He was still touring like 220 days a year. Unbelievable. So he's really good. I think I mentioned to you all earlier, I met Chuck Jones, the guy who created Bugs Bunny. One of my favorite interviews of my entire life. He was charming, he was very smart. We didn't talk about cartoons. We talked about books. He talked about John Steinbeck. And you know, it's funny, I didn't ask him because it just didn't occur to me at the time. I think he knew Steinbeck. But he was just kind of making small talk about things, and he kept talking about Steinbeck. And afterward, I thought, well, he's talking as if he knew him. So maybe he did, but I mean, he's passed away now, so I can't ask him. But he was a really smart guy, a really good guy. So I liked him. But I met a lot of people. I met Brad and Angelina. They're very nice. They're very pleasant people. I met them separately. I would truthfully and not in a guy way, much more impressed with her than him. She knows her stuff. She's very smart, very pleasant to talk to. And there are other people who I know. I know Jim Gaffigan. He's a nice guy. I got retweeted last night by George Foreman, which is great. That's fantastic. I've been a fan of George Foreman's forever, and not just because of the grills. What else?
Can you explain your most dangerous stories involving CNN, such as ducking beneath gunfire in war zones?
Well, I'll tell you. This is just a great kind of war story. It was just kind of cool, and there's not really a punchline to it, but it was interesting. There have been some other things over times that have been a little bit hairy, but I was over in Kosovo some years ago when they were kind of sorting everything out, and we went with the Marines to this town. I can't remember the name of it right now. And when we got to the town, we were going to go on patrol with the Marines at about 3 in the morning. And they had sort of built they'd sort of made a makeshift fortress out of an old school there, which was no longer being used for school purposes. And we were going to sleep in this school. My producer, and actually the producer and the crew decided they would sleep. We had an armored vehicle, which was not heavily armored. It was armored enough that a tank mine would have destroyed it, but a personnel mine would not have. So we had some reasonable chances. And the crew and the producer said they wanted to sleep in the vehicle right outside, which is some bad sleeping. And the interpreter and I said, well, we'll sleep inside. But we walked into the room where we're going to sleep, and all the lights are out, everything's dark. And we walk in, and the Marines say, don't turn any lights on, because the other hillside is covered with snipers. And if they see a light, they'll shoot you. So don't turn any lights on. And then the great part was, and sleep on the tables. They had sort of like table desks. They said sleep on the tables, not on the floor, because there are way too many rats on the floor. And that was kind of wacky, because we sort of crawled up on our tables, and you sort of wrapped up, and you closed your eyes, and you said, go sleep for a while. Then we were on patrol with the Marines. Great thing happened with the Marines, though, because when every day we would jump in and out over the border from Macedonia, because we were staying in Macedonia. And they had this gigantic line, like 2 miles, of people trying to get in and out of the country. And the Macedonian police there is all very complicated. And the very first day we're like, we cannot wait in this line all day. We've got work to do. So we would see a military convoy going through, and they would come through. I mean, when they came through, it was like, go. It didn't matter what country. They were all NATO forces. So there'd be Germans, and there'd be Australians, there'd be French, and whomever. And whenever we saw one, we'd take our vehicle, and we'd just jump in behind them and start chasing them in. And when the Macedonian police started waving their guns at us, we'd say, we're with them! And we'd just keep going into the country. It was great fun. Yeah, that was kind of wild. And then I had a guy pulled a knife on me once in Louisiana. That was pretty funny. And in the LA riots, a bunch of gunfire. Central America years ago, we had a flat in a town that was sort of like a rebel stronghold for their civil war. That was not good. Had a flat, didn't speak Spanish. We changed that flat really fast. We got out of Dodge. What?
Aside from running, how has your daughter inspired you in other aspects of life?
Oh, you know something? You rascally kids. It's really interesting how you inspire us, who are older than you. And here's the funny thing, you do it in a lot of ways that you may not realize, just like we do things that you'll remember that we don't realize. It's really funny how, I mean, this isn't just for kids, this is for your life. I mean, I have friends now who will reach out from 30 years ago, who will say, you know, you said this to me, and it changed my life. And I'm thinking, that wasn't me. I don't know who said that, but it's really funny how these little things make a difference. So my daughters have, they're both very smart girls. They work hard. They have reminded me in really substantial ways about how fun all of life can be. Because they have fun. They work hard, but they're really fun girls. They have a blast. Did any of you see the end of by chance, the Georgia Tech FSU game the other day? That amazing blocked field goal ran back for this touchdown. It was like this gigantic highlight shown absolutely everywhere. It was homecoming, so the older daughter was back there. The younger daughter was actually not feeling well, so she wasn't at the game. But to get these pictures from the field, and the students stormed the field, and they sent pictures of their friends and everything, it's like, yeah, that would be fun. That's all right, because it's just easy. It's really easy as you get older to just start grinding. And I don't think it's a good thing for us. It's good to not grind. It's good to love your life. And I think young people help renew our sense of all the things that are possible in the world. Yes, you guys make mistakes, just like we did. And you won't make the world, we all thought that we would make the world so much better than our parents, I guess. And we did what we could do, and hopefully we improved some things, and hopefully you'll improve things on us. I said to my daughters the other day, I said, you know what? I'm counting on you to be more successful people than I am, and I don't mean by a job. I mean life. You know, try to improve. Our parents, my wife's family, my parents, they came from very different times and very different circumstances than we live in today. And I hope that we've improved the world in our own way. And I hope our children do too. I hope my children surpass me in every way. Not because I care about my place in the world, but because I like seeing young people do well. And you guys have a lot of cool ideas. That's inspiring. I hear young people say things all the time where I think, oh, that's a way of looking at it I've never considered. It's good. You in particular inspire me. What?
How do you prepare for going on camera?
Pardon?
How do you prepare to go on camera, like CNN or?
Well, first, there's the mascara. You know what's funny? I think it's important to relax and know your subject. I always tell young reporters this, just know your subject. If you know what you're talking about and you stick to what you know, you'll do fine. If you see kids, I say kids, sorry I keep using that term. By kids I mean anyone under 35. But you see people who try to prepare too much to be on camera. And they have this whole thing where they kind of memorize it and they're all set. And oh man, it's painful. When it comes to them, they do this kind of deer in the headlights kind of that's right, Bob. Police say at 11:38 the perpetrators came around the corner and they had some sort of flammable liquid and I said, what? I hear that and I'm always like, here's what you'd actually say. Police had two guys had a can of gas in them. Boom. We all get it, right? So relax, say what you know, and say it well. That's all there is to it. It's not that hard. It seems not that hard to me, I guess, because I've done it so many times. I don't know how many stories I've done now. I was trying to do the math the other day. I guess I've probably done 40,000, 50,000 stories. I don't know, a lot. I used to be able to remember them all, not so much anymore. Yeah?
I was wondering, how did your life change with both your career and just in general after you won your first Emmy for broadcast journalism?
That is a great question. You know how my life changed after I won my first Emmy Award? Not at all. In fact, and this is true, this is really funny, Emmy Awards in news, what they really matter for is anchors of big shows, because the network can promote that, and they like promoting that. I was working for World News Tonight with Peter Jennings at the time. And I knew Peter, and I worked for Ted Koppel a lot, and these are wonderful people, and I enjoyed them. It was good times. I won this Emmy Award for a report I did about juvenile justice and corrections programs with kids in prison. And I guess I wasn't paying any attention because my producer and I landed in San Jose on a story one morning shortly after dawn. And as we're walking to the airport, she had some early message, and I don't think we certainly didn't have email then, so I'm not sure, somebody must have called her or something. But she said, you know, we won last night. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, we won an Emmy Award last night. Because the awards were in New York and we were somewhere else. And I thought, oh, well, that's great. And when the award actually showed up in my office, complete truth, showed up in my office, I was based in Denver and covered all of the nation there. The day the award showed up, nobody was in the office except for me. And I get this big box. I didn't know what it was, and I cut it open, and there's this big, great, shiny Emmy, like you see on TV all of a sudden. And I look at it, and I lifted it out in my empty office, and I said, I'd like to thank all the people who joined this category. So it sits in an office at home, and I have another one in the office for an interview thing, and then I want a couple more as part of sort of big team efforts, you know, like where we like some kind of election, cover some big stuff. But those are different. I don't feel the same about those. The two that I have at home are the two that I really won, kind of, you know, small team. And it feels pretty good. That doesn't change your life. Awards, great advice about awards that I heard recently. I really like this. When you get an award, put it out, enjoy it, share it, feel really good about it for a time, and then put it away. So you don't spend too much of your life thinking about things you did. Keep thinking about things you're going to do. It's really easy to see the trophy that's been sitting there for 15 years and it's all dusty, and it's like, come on, let's move on. Not that it counts, it's important. But you see people get caught up in that. You'll see some adults do that. They get so caught up in living some past glory, and I'm like, come on, you got new glory in you. You're a wonderful person. What else?
What was your what is your biggest motivation to keep pushing through challenges that you have in both work and life and things like that?
I write about this idea in the book, this idea that this is the moment you have, and this really is what motivates me. This is the moment we have. Everything before this is history. It's wonderful, it's great, nice to remember, that's fine. But it's history. And everything in front of us is hope. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we have this. So I just wake up every single day, even on bad days, even on miserable days, and I say to myself, this is my day. And I don't want to end this day regretting that I didn't try. So I try something. Get in there, make it happen. You know, they say the artist Salvador Dali, he was interviewed one time and he said something like, every morning I wake up and I think, what is this Dali going to do today? He's a little nutty, but I like that idea. I like the idea of all of us, waking up, and that's kind of what this is all about. One of the phrases I use in here, and I don't know where it came from. I've tried to locate it. I think it maybe came from the science fiction writer Robert Heinlein originally. But it's a phrase we use around our house. If it's inevitable, it's ideal. If it is inevitable, it's ideal. And what that means is whatever circumstance you are in is inevitable. You're there. That makes it the perfect circumstance to start moving forward with your life in a positive way that makes you feel good. You know why it's perfect? Because it's the only circumstance you have. Don't waste 1 minute thinking about the circumstance you wish you had, because it's just wasted time. But you can do remarkable things taking one step at a time. And I'll tell you something, I mean this. When I took off Saturday morning at 6 a.m. in the dark and it was cold, I was acutely aware that I was taking the first steps of a long series of runs that I really did not know if I could do. I feel really good tonight because I only have 26 miles tomorrow. And I think I can do that. I think I can make it even if things are difficult. But those first steps can be hard, but you stack up steps. And anything you do, it's remarkable how we move forward. Relationships, the way you feel about yourself, the way you feel about your job, skills you want to take on. And if you have that as a life view, you'll have a really nice life. Because way too many people just don't. And I know people struggle. I know life is hard. I totally get that. But I also think I have been blessed in my life because my parents were good people who taught me how to work. And I've met good people who have helped me understand that life isn't always fair and things don't always go well. But keep moving forward and keep trying and keep taking those little steps. And I'm a happy guy. I have bad moments like everybody else. I have things not go my way plenty of times. But I spend a whole lot more time feeling okay because it's where I am. It's inevitable. Right? It's ideal. There's no place on earth I'd rather be right now, right here with you. I'm sure some of you don't feel that way, but I wish that you also wanted to be here. Can we ask any more quick questions from the audience at all? Any questions from anybody? Yeah.
Can you talk about the difference in writing your first book and the second book, and the different, obviously it went better the second time.
Yeah.
If there's anything,
That's the chief difference.
anything that you consciously took with you from the first experience.
Yeah, absolutely. The question was, what's the difference between writing my first book and the second book? What did I take with me from the process? What was different in all of it? The first book, many people who I know write talk about having a drawer novel or a drawer book, and what they mean is you write the first one and put it in a drawer because the odds of it getting published are not good, and you'll do whatever. My first book was a novel about, it was like a terrorism novel, but it was before 9/11, and then when it was kind of in shape to be published, 9/11 came along, and all the publishers were like, forget it, we're not talking about terrorism now. So now it's dated, and it's what it was. But I learned a lot through that process. I learned so much about how to write, and I don't regret for a minute writing that book because I learned so much about what I was doing wrong. This one kind of flowed out of me almost, of course it still takes work, but this one just felt like I was telling a natural story. It also fits more what I've done as a journalist, because this is a true story, the other one was fiction. It's funny, fiction is remarkably hard because you have to make up everything. In journalism, it's happening, right? It may seem outlandish that the mayor has a llama in his kitchen, but he did. I was there. I saw it. In fiction, if you write that, it sounds crazy. But that was part of the process. And I will say in writing this one, every time I wrote something that I felt I was struggling to write, I just threw it out. Because if I'm struggling to write it, people don't struggle to read it. And who wants to do that? So that was part of the process. It was really a lot of fun. I finished it. I had all the pieces put together, basically, but I had still some holes. And my wife and older daughter actually had to make a trip out to California, for my daughter worked for SpaceX for a while, and which is a pretty cool place to work. So I had the house to myself, so I could come home from work after being at CNN all day, and I get home at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and then I could sit down and write till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then sleep and do it again without any distractions, except for the dog, and she doesn't say that much. That was good. That was part of it. What else? Yeah.
And listening to everything you said, specifically about running, it didn't sound like competition gets in there anywhere. But I was just curious, if you've run so many marathons, are you still looking to run farther or faster or come better in your beats? Or is that?
Oh, listen, competition. There are some big bragging rights which come from running 5 marathons in 5 days. Even among the ultra running crowd, people will be like, yeah, check you out. Because that's a lot of running. And this summer, I tried to run fast a little bit, which is sort of, when you get to a certain age, running fast is a little bit beside the point. I ran some races that I ran pretty fast, and I felt pretty good about them. I ran a few 10Ks under 50 minutes, which is pretty fast. Not fast for you young people, but all of us who are over 40, we get that. Let's cook it. So yeah, but I'm a very competitive person, but I'm a very competitive person in the way that I truly feel very thrilled with whomever wins, as long as they win fair, they win and they're good people. Because it's like, hey, somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. It's great, today was my day to win. It feels wonderful. Tomorrow's my day to lose. That's okay too. I'll get better. What else? Yeah.
How did you come to the decision to write the book? Is it something that you just...
It just sort of, partway through the year, it just became such an interesting year. And it was just a lot of running. And it was and I was learning a lot along the way. And it just seemed to awaken something, not just in me, but in our whole family, that seemed so worthwhile and so much fun. And I liked the stories. Plus, I was telling the stories a lot. People were asking me, and they just thought it was hilarious when I was like lost in the wilderness and I fell down a hill and all that. Whoa, tell that one again. And it just seemed a very natural thing. I've said before, I think this book would have been written by somebody. I think I just got the straw. I think this book is a book that is a natural one for runners. And there are about 30 million runners in America. I said to the publisher, I said, well, there are 30 million runners in America. If each one just buys one copy, I'll be satisfied. That's it. I don't know. Who knows? That's the book business part of it. I just like writing. It's fun. It is, I will say this, many of you probably thought about writing a book. This still seems kind of unreal to me. Because I just love books. Love books. My wife, poor woman, my stacks of books constantly grow and they move, and I bring this home and I bring that home, and they're just everywhere. And she's like, you do have to do something with these because there are too many of them. Well, yeah, but look at this one. And they just pile up everywhere.
Have you been starstruck with any runners like Neb or any?
Neb is a friend of mine.
There you go.
Check it out, eh?
Wow.
Yeah, Neb and I got to know each other kind of through this process. Actually, we got to know each other because I did a story on Neb about how he finished 4th in London. And my point of the story was, this is a remarkable thing. Guy who's almost 40 years old, finishing 4th in the marathon. Americans don't win marathons. So Neb and I met, and now we exchange. I could text Meg right now. Yeah, hey Meg, what you doing? And it's we don't chat all the time, but we chat periodically. And I'll tell you a funny story. Meg was I ran the New York City Marathon a couple years ago. Meg had not a great race. He finished like 23rd, which out of 50,000 people to me would be fantastic. But he's a guy who can win. So he had a bad race, and I had been teasing him the day before. I said, hey pal, if I pass you, I'm not going to have a lot of time to visit. And he was like, whoa. Anyway, the bottom line is some months later, I was trying to break 4 hours that day for the first time since my 20s. I ran, and those of you who competed in anything in your life will know what this feels like. I ran a 4:01. Yeah. Wasn't that a failure I mentioned a minute ago? I had trouble getting my watch right, my GPS watch, so I wasn't quite sure where I was, but when I crossed the line, I texted my wife and said I either broke it by a few seconds or I missed it by a few seconds. I missed it. A few months later, Med was in my office in DC. He was passing through town. And he said, he's sitting on my sofa in my office, and he's looking at my splits. And he goes, oh, well, you need to do your splits right here. And your last mile was the fastest mile and everything. He said, but gosh, he said, you could have just run a few seconds faster per mile, And you would have practiced, thanks, man. Yeah, that's what I need. One of the best runners in the world pointing out my shortcomings. But he's a really good guy. And I've come to know a few other people. Not a lot. I mean, starstruck, I don't get starstruck about almost anybody. I guess I'm probably a little starstruck over Matt because I'm so impressed with what he does. I mean, what an amazing runner. But I know, met a lot of people over the years and met most of the presidents and people like that. Most of them are just people doing their thing. They're like us, They don't all think they're like us, but they are. What else? Quickly, I know we're short on time. I don't want to hold you guys. Who else? Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, have you had any physical setbacks, stress fractures, pulled muscles?
I have not. I've been very lucky. Although one of the reasons I'm not really well trained for what I'm doing right now, and I do, trust me, I love saying I'm going to run my 5th marathon in 5 days tomorrow, and I'm not really well trained. That's a great feeling. And I ran the Chicago Marathon 2 weeks ago too. So I have been very fortunate. But one of the reasons I'm not so well trained right now is about 6 weeks ago maybe, I was running on a trail. Ronnie was home. And my younger daughter, Allie, by the way, told me today for the first time she wants to run a half. She ran a 10-miler this past weekend with her sister. But we were running on a trail and I caught a rock with my toe or a root or something, and it yanked my leg and I fell down. I didn't go all the way down, but I kind of yanked my leg forward. And those of you who run or have done anything physical, sometimes you don't seem to have done anything, but then something feels weird afterward. And my right knee felt kind of twitchy for a couple runs after that. I was having some little issues with tenderness. So I really backed way down because I figured my base for running was good. I could get by with a little base deterioration. I could not get by with injury. But that's pretty much it. In that regard, I have been genetically very lucky. And even this pain, a little bit of pain I'm having on my feet right now, I'm mindful of that because I've avoided injury by not being stupid about it. But you get older, man, the recovery time, much more involved than it was when I was younger. One last question, anybody? Yes?
Did you write the book while you were running? I'm a
Yes.
runner, and so I work out.
It was very difficult because I would...
You've got a lot of miles. What are you thinking about?
Well, I wrote it while running in the sense that mentally I wrote it while I was running. I would spend hours out there running, and once I decided I was writing it, I would structure it in my head and think about things. So I wrote a lot that way. I don't feel that I spent a lot of time physically writing it, but I spent a huge amount of time mentally writing it. So by the time I actually got to the writing part, it was more a rendering of what I had decided. And then, of course, you go back and you rewrite because that's what you do. But that's sort of how it happened. But I don't actually think at the height of the running that writing it would have been possible. Because I think that the two demands are they're both too time consumptive. And frankly, if I had done that, I would have missed out on the part that I was writing about anyway, which is feeling better about my family and having fun and having a good time being around people, which I still do these days. So that's it. You guys have been terrific. I'm sorry if I nattered on too long here, but I love chatting with you all. I love talking about the subject, and I like meeting people. So I'm happy to sign some books afterward and do whatever else you want to do. We can go dancing. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude this part of the program. If you'd like to get your book signed by Mr. Foreman, you can go over to the cafeteria. There's also some refreshments there. Have a pleasant evening.